One of the beautiful things about New York is you've seen it all. You've done it all, right? There are people from every ethnicity, age, every orientation, so nothing's really shocking.
With the scooter, it's challenging. You find ramps, keep a smile on your face, and usually people will help you out if you need it.
People with disabilities are not seen on film, television, or theater. It's like we don't exist.
Not accessible, not accessible, not accessible.
I get up, you sit down, I push you around. Have people look at you up and down like, damn, I wonder what happened to him.
New York, busy, bustling, brash. New York was my home for several months back in 1994, before my accident. But my life has changed, and so has the city. Today, New York is home to more than 1 million people who live with a disability, people whose lives had little relevance to mine back then.
Nothing's really shocking in New York City anymore, so I think that that's really beneficial in a lot of ways. You don't get a lot of people gawking or staring or doing any of those sorts of things. You might have to ask them to get out of your way or bang them in the ankles with your chair, but you'll get through and people probably won't think twice about it.
Lawrence is quite a talker and a doer. He's a filmmaker, dancer, and director of the Disability Network.
So Lawrence, tell me about what you do.
Well, it depends on what day you're talking about. It's pretty busy most days, but I work as the executive director of the Disabilities Network of New York City. That's essentially an organization of organizations, and we work to make sure that disability is on the public policy agenda. So if city council or the mayor is talking about an issue with housing or transportation or employment, we make sure that people with disabilities are at the table.
Tell me a little bit about how you actually got into advocating for people with disabilities.
Well, I've had cerebral palsy since birth, right? But the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed 19 years ago in 1990. I was just getting out of college then, and I thought, we passed the law. I can just go work in marketing and PR and do some different things, which is really what I focused on. I always did some degree of advocacy, but never in the areas of disability. And it wasn't until I saw the film $1 Million Baby, and I don't want to give away spoilers for people, but, you know, the end of that story was that the woman who had been a boxer was better off being dead than being disabled. And the audience clapped at the end of that film, thinking it was a heroic thing to put her down like an old dog. And I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of work to do.
What are some of the issues that you're working with the Disability Network?
The wonderful thing about New York City is you look in the New York Times or a magazine like Time Out New York, any given day you can find hundreds and hundreds of things that you want to do. Now, the issue is, can you get into them? New York City's an old city. There's some infrastructure problems, right? The fact that some cobblestones have been there for a few hundred years don't necessarily make it easy for folks who use wheelchairs or people that are blind to get across. We've got 467 subways, 65 of them are wheelchair accessible. That is, if the elevators are working.
So how are we going to get uptown now?
Well, I think what we should do is probably try to catch one of these taxis. Now, what you need to look out for is one of these bigger vans, but the ones with the access symbol, the wheelchair symbol on the front.
Oh, okay.
Which will
so
be
that
blue,
makes it nice and clear.
Yeah, because there are 600 of the vans, but they're not necessarily accessible. I gotta warn you, we might stand a better chance finding Elvis or a unicorn. But remember, you gotta look for the symbol on the front. Not accessible, not accessible, not accessible.
I'm easy now, though.
And you're gonna take anything. All right.
The transport issue was a reoccurring theme throughout my stay here.
Can we grab you? We're going that way.
Keep up the good work, Lawrence.
Oh, now he's gone.
So this is the High Line a bit further down here?
Yep.
Actor and advocate Christine Bruno wanted to show off the city's new accessible public space. The High Line's built on the old elevated railway. But we need to find a lift in working order to get us up there.
So we're going to head to the lift on 16th Street?
Yeah, hopefully.
Is that a common thing in New York, like lifts being out of order?
90% of them at any given time.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's try this one.
All right.
There's only 2 lifts.
Yeah, on the whole of the, and it runs to 33rd Street.
So if this one's out of order, we're not.
That's correct.
We're not getting up there.
Christine's written a one-woman play about her experience of life and love in New York. It's a raw piece, reminiscent of that famous New York drama, Sex and the City.
I love these shoes. I mean, look at these shoes. These are the kind of shoes that transform your legs from short, hairy appendages to long, lean, shapely limbs of luscious promise. Okay. I know this sounds cliche, but I've had a long run of bad luck when it comes to guys. I've experimented with internet dating, even got a few dates, if you can call them that. But most of the men, and I use the term loosely, could never get past the idea of me to find out what I really had to offer. The last guy, Steve, seemed pretty promising. He was into music, theater, film, loves a good cannoli. I thought, okay. Then he calls me and he says, there's a Turkish place in my neighborhood. Should we meet for lunch? I say, yeah, I'd like that. But there's something you need to know. Because when it comes to internet dating, I am a firm believer in no surprises. I have cerebral palsy. And I hear that tone. But I think to myself, well, maybe he just needs a little more time to process what I just said, or a little more information. Do you know what that is? Excruciating silence. It's called Screw You, Jimmy Choo. And it's basically about my relationship to sex and men and my obsession with shoes that I can't wear, namely high heel shoes. And sort of every woman's obsession with looking good in high heel shoes, and why we feel so compelled to, to judge ourselves by that outward exterior.
Christine works for an organisation that's challenging the American entertainment industry. They want to see more people with disabilities on the stage and screen.
Basically, people with disabilities are not seen on film, television, or theater, particularly in theater. It's like we don't exist. And so if we don't exist in that medium, which everyone watches, then how can we expect stories to be written about us? I don't think it's malicious. I think that's an important point. I don't ever think it's someone saying, oh, I don't want to use those people. I don't. It's more about lack of understanding, lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. They'll call me and say, oh, we have an episode of such and such. We have an episode of Law and Order. We need 4 wheelchair users, or we need, 2 men with Down syndrome. Who do you got? We have a database of over 400 actors.
How do you feel when you see people placed in those roles and see that working?
I feel the public is ready. If you put them in front of them and you say, okay, this is the new reality, then the public will, okay, they'll accept that. It's really the decision makers, the powers that be, who I think are run on a culture of fear.
The first place most tourists visit is Ground Zero. A huge hole in the ground. Nothing much to see. Yet I joined the rest of the throng making their way downtown.
These are just all...
They're basically the pictures of what happened on that day. There aren't many things around here besides the museums. I think they're kind of expensive for the people around,
How much are these books?
They say 15 on a bag, but they usually sell them for like $5.
$5, yeah? There's a lot of tourists around, and it seems to me it's something to tick off the list. You come to New York, you go to the Empire State Building, you see the Statue of Liberty, and you come to Ground Zero. And it's a little unsettling that you can buy a postcard of somebody running, screaming from a building.